Some rules are nothing but old habits that people are afraid to change. The Reese and Fowler. But hey there, welcome to the show dedicated to helping you not just survive retirement, but to have the comfort and the confidence to lean in and create a great life in retirement. To rock retirement. My name is Roger Whitney. I'm excited to be here with you today. Now, today on the show, we're starting Retirement Plan Live Case Study. Now, this is where we take a listener, someone like you, and we meet them. We talk with them and walk through who they are, which we're going to do today. You're going to meet Henry and Lucy. Next week, they're going to share what goals they have for retirement. They want to retire in their 40s. They're changing a habit there. And then the week after that, we're going to have them share what resources they have to pay for this retirement. And then on January 29th, I believe it is, we're going to have a live meetup where I'll be there. Henry and Lucy will be there. Hundreds of you will be there. And we're going to go through the analysis as to whether it's feasible for them to hit that goal. And if not, what pathways that might they consider? And if so, how they might make it resilient. So we can do all that together live on the 29th. You can go to livewithroger.com to register for that. And even if you can't be there live, go ahead and register because we'll send out the replay. And in addition, we'll have a Q&A about the Rock Retirement Club and our fall cohort to help you plan better for retirement. So you can do all that at livewithroger.com. So on deck today is to meet Henry and Lucy. We're going to do a smart sprint. And we're going to talk about words. We'll share some words at the end of the show. That's been a hot topic. But first, I want to go to the Retirement Toolkit and talk about a common heuristic and when to use it and when not to use it. In today's Retirement Toolkit, I want to talk about a heuristic that can help answer the question, what's my number? How much money do I need to have to support my lifestyle? Do I have enough? This is important questions when it comes to the financial side of retirement planning. And the heuristic I want to talk about is the 4% rule. Now, if you've listened to the show for a while, you know that I'm typically very critical of the 4% rule because I think it's often misused and I think it's way over talked about. It's one of those things that just caught fire. It's easy to write blogs about. It's easy to podcast about. Influencers love to talk about it all the time, and it drives me nuts because it's not retirement planning. It was never meant to be used as a system to pay for your life in retirement. It's a heuristic. So usually I'm pretty critical of it, but in certain situations, it's a great heuristic to start the conversation to answer some really important questions in retirement. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let's get a baseline knowledge of what the 4% rule is. It's been around for decades. A financial planner did a study or analysis that he published trying to answer the question, okay, if I have this amount of assets and I want to spend from it, and my spending needs to increase every year for inflation, and I don't want to run out of money in the next 30 years, what percentage of those assets can I take safely? Safe withdrawal rate. So he did a lot of analysis. He assumed that you invested, I believe it was 50% stocks, 50% bond portfolio using historical data. It adjusted the income coming out for inflation. It didn't account for taxes. It didn't account for other income sources like Social Security to determine, well, if I had X amount of assets, how much money could I take out? Go to the end of the story, it was 4%, roughly 4%. And the gentleman that did the study came out with a more recent book, and now maybe it's 4.5. Who knows what it is? That part I don't care about. So as an example, if it's 4%, the 4% rule, if you have $2.5 million, using this rule of thumb, you could spend $100,000 and feel relatively safe based on historical data that you're not going to run out of money. And that $100,000 would increase every year by inflation. So as an example, if you spent $100,000 in the first year, the next year would be $103,000 and so forth. So that is essentially what the 4% rule is. A good back of the napkin, I have this amount of money, what might be a safe spending? Now, as FIRE has become more popular, financially independent, retire early, we'll talk about what that is in more detail in a minute. When that movement came, they came up with another heuristic, which is basically the inverse of the 4% rule, which is how much money do I need to save to be able to spend a certain amount? And the 25X rule is, well, if I want to spend $100,000 a year, multiply that by 25, and that tells you what your savings target would need to be, 2.5 million. Math works the same way, either way. So that is a complementary heuristic for someone that's younger. Now, the benefits of these heuristics are that they're just simple frameworks. I can do it on the back of the napkin, and the research done gives you some basis for, okay, this should be plausible that this would last 30 years and I wouldn't have to worry about running out of money because of bad markets and other things. That's really helpful as a conversation starter on a very difficult topic of retirement planning. And if you're younger, it's a great target from a savings perspective. We are all teleological in nature. We love to have targets, things that we're working for. So if you're younger, this will help you set a target of what you might need to save. If you're older, you can look at your spending relative to the 4% rule, just as sort of a quick fact check. In our retirement planning, when we do long-term cash flow projections, we pay attention to what the withdrawal rate is. The only difference is we're more worried about trends and averages than we are each year 4%. Some years we might have 8%, and then it might go down to 2% later in life because income sources kick in. So we still pay attention to it. So it has a lot of benefits. Now, what are some of the drawbacks to using these heuristics? Well, one is they're very limited when you get past the rule of thumb part of it. It's assuming static spending. There's little or no flexibility to it. And especially if you're older and if you're in retirement, the 4% rule can act as an anchor and become a ceiling to your spending rather than a floor. And that can cause you not to spend money and ultimately have too much money towards the end of life, which is just as tragic as running out of money. So there are some disadvantages to this as well. So who is it best used for? When do we want to use this type of heuristic? Well, number one is going to be those early and mid retirement savers, people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that are starting to think about retirement, and they're trying to figure out how much money do they need to save so they can determine their savings and their investing and their lifestyle choices. Well, this is where that 25X rule, well, it's if I want to have $100,000 in spending, a good target might be 2.5 million. Seems like a lot, right? But that can help inform their savings program and also how much risk they take as they're saving. So that can help set lifestyle targets, and also becomes a behavioral anchor because we like to have targets to aim for, something to see how we're doing year by year relative to that target. And that's a very helpful thing when you're saving over time. Now, here's an interesting thing. If you're going to use it for that, generally this is for all the younger fire type people, generally when we use it, we're thinking about how much do we need to save. But there's two numbers in that equation, right? There's the amount that you need to have, but there's also the amount that you're trying to solve for in terms of spending. And that is really important. And we've seen that in the Retirement Plan Live case studies that we've had over the last 9, 10, 12 years. And you can get all of those in our new resource center, by the way, which is at rogerwhitney.com. We've had people that they needed to spend $200,000 a year. That was their target, which meant, what's the math on 200,000? What's 200,000? Well, see, now these heuristics come into handy. Times 25, that's $5 million. You want to spend $200,000, you're going to aim to try to get to $5 million. We've had people that they needed that. So they needed to have a lot of assets because they demanded a lot to maintain their lifestyle. But we've also had case studies where I think the lowest one was someone spend like $50,000 a year or less. And they were one of the happiest couples that we talked to in the series, equally as happy as everybody else. They designed a life that was fulfilling for them. It didn't cost a lot of money to do. And by doing that, the target for how much they needed to save or what their number wasn't near as high. So we don't want to forget that part of it and just focus on the savings and investing part of it, because those are trade-offs. Now, in some ways you can do that, I'm thinking of myself here, is I live, in the burbs of Dallas, Fort Worth. ultimately, I'm going to be living in Colorado in a small town where I'm going to have a paid off mortgage. Everything we do, once we have the equipment, the bicycle and the hiking shoes and things like that, don't cost a lot of money. And I won't live around a lot of people that are living a lot of money, and we're not always going to the new restaurant and everything else, and we're around the things that we love to do. Trying to organize your life around that will support you doing the things that are meaningful for you from a community aspect, etc., while you're still working will set yourself up not to necessarily have to save a ton of money. So I just want to make sure we pay attention to both of those numbers, not just the savings amount or the amount you need to have. All right. So mid to early retirement savers, this is a good heuristic to work off of for planning, since we can't even think about what retirement actually is. Where I have been using this heuristic a lot more, though, because I don't work with retirement savers per se. Where I've been using it a lot more, though, is with people that are near or in retirement that are overfunded. They have too much money. They've overshot the goal. Those are the people where this can become very helpful, because when you have more money than you need, that presents a particular problem, because it doesn't, it takes away some of the anxiety of retiring. But honestly, it doesn't in a lot of ways, because we are scarcity creatures. Physiologically, our body holds on to fat if it can, because it wants to store just in case. And Michael Easter highlighted a ton of research on this in the scarcity loop. We constantly think more is better just in case. That is just how we are wired as humans. And getting out of that scarcity loop, it doesn't matter if you intellectually know you have way more than you need. More is always better. And sometimes, let's be honest, when we're growing our wealth, whether it's through the amazing income that we have, or the income and our savings, and I just updated my net worth statement here at the end of the year, we get addicted to more. More is better. It feels better. It makes us feel safe. It makes us feel like we grew. We don't want to see it go down. That doesn't feel safe. We're addicted to more in many times, because we've been in this performance, build wealth mentality for decades. And it challenges to people that are overfunded is they fear the unknown just as much as anybody else. Doesn't matter whether it's rational. We're not rational beings per se. And all of this is happening in retirement when we have the best opportunity to create experiences or have impact on our community. When we're younger, when we're worried about our older selves and we can't get over ourselves. So using this heuristic to help build a floor, but not have a ceiling, to help them see that they could spend more earlier and still be okay, whether it's spending more on trips or on giving to the community or to their family. Using this heuristic is really helping those people really get over themselves and expand the possibilities, not stay in that scarcity mentality. That's where I've been using this heuristic much more. So this is a good retirement toolkit to talk about today as we meet Henry and Lucy, which we're going to do here in a second, because Henry and Lucy wanted to do what's called FIRE. And we did a month-long episode on that we'll put a link to that in the noodle. But FIRE is an acronym that stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. Right? That's the acronym. So let's focus on the first two letters of that. Financially independent. What does that mean? Independent from what? Well, if you think of you and I, if you're still working, you are dependent on your ability to work and earn an income to fund your life now and pay your bills, and also to build your wealth so you can fund your later life. So we are dependent upon that income. And that really shapes the choices that we make in where we live, who we associate with, what we do every day, the games that we play, or the things that we'll put up with from a work perspective, whether that's nonstop travel, endless meetings, the political stuff that happens in corporations, the dynamics between superiors and subordinates, what we say yes and no to, because we're financially dependent on our income that's produced by work, it forces all these choices. So financial independence, what is that? Well, I think it's the opposite, right? It's where we have enough resources, income sources, or money that we don't need to work for income to support the life that we want now or in the future. That's pretty cool, right? Doesn't mean we don't work. I dislocated my finger on New Year's Eve and slept with it that night, and then went into like one of those standalone ER places in Mansfield. By the way, it was an amazing experience. They were wonderful. Want to go to one of those? I was asking my son, you need to go to the ER or something? Standalone ones are great. And if you go like 6 a.m. to 7, 8 a.m., that's when you want to go. You start going at 9, they get really crowded. So I went, and they were wonderful. I think they were just great. But I was talking with the radiologist, the lady who took the x-rays of my fingers. Her name is Mihen. I want to give her a shout out because she was a wonderful spirit. And I had a vagal episode. I passed out, which is fun, falling off the bed. But she and I were having a conversation because I had to drink and they were all worried about me after I fell out of bed. But her husband's retired. She's worked at high pressure hospitals. She was just telling me some of her stories. She's in her 60s and she works a couple days a week at this little standalone ER. She loves the people she works with. She gets a lot of fulfillment from it, but she doesn't need to work. She and her husband are financially independent, but she's choosing to work, but she structured her choices differently because she doesn't need the money. She still wants to work, so she left the big high pressure hospitals in Dallas and works a couple days a week at this place. And when she doesn't want to work, she can easily do that. She gets to hang out with a team that she loves. She gets to serve using her skills. That's the difference between financial dependence on your work and financial independence. So that's the first FI of FIRE. Retire early is the second part, and that's what Henry and Lucy are talking about. So let's go have a chat with them and what's driving them to try to do this. So today we're going to meet Henry and Lucy. They're going to tell us a little bit of their story and where they're trying to go. And then next week, we're going to have them explain their goals and their values and what they see their life looking like if they have the resources to do it. So let's have that chat. So I'm here with Henry and Lucy. How are you?
Good.
Good, Roger.
So I know you shared before we started that you really thought a lot about these names that you're taking on. How many hours did you spend, would you say?
Oh. Well, I wouldn't say hours. It was probably a half hour, I would say, to an hour at the most.
Okay.
He got annoyed by me sending texts of different suggestions.
Well, it's sort of fun. It's sort of fun. And so what is the origin story of the names?
Well, he originally suggested some couple names, pseudonames from a show we used to watch, but I didn't really like one of the male names. So then that started me down the path of just looking at like movies and TV shows, like with couples and things that we had liked or watched together, and came up with Henry and Lucy from 50 First Dates, which is one of our favorite chick flicks. I wouldn't say his favorite, but mine.
All right. So, Henry, should I put this on my list? Because I don't think I've seen it. Or
yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it's an Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, it's a comedy.
It's pretty solid.
Okay. It's fun. So we're already getting a sense for your intentionality here. Okay. And so, what year were the both of you born?
So I was born in 1980.
1981.
1980, 1981. Okay. I graduated high school in 1985, which makes me feel old. And so you're both 45, right? Until
44.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm not putting the exact birthday, so I'll have this off a little. Tell me what FIRE is. So the acronym and what you understand it to be and what it means, what you think it is.
So the acronym is Financial Independence Retire Early.
Okay.
I first heard about it in, I think, like 2017 from a coworker, just had offhand mentioned that acronym to me as we were talking about some things. And so I had never heard of it. So I looked it up and I'm like, oh, I like this. Like the thought of, for me, it really is about retiring early. Whereas I think a lot of times now people are trying to talk more about just the financial independence part of it as well. But for me, it's always been like, no, I don't want to be in this grind anymore. I just want to do what I want when I want, to have our time freedom to do that. So that's what fire is to me. But I don't know if you. So then it's just learning about that and like how do you even contemplate.
So you were in your
able to do
30s.
that?
You were in your 30s when it came into your universe.
Yeah. Yep.
Did it seem wacky, or was it like, heck yeah, that's what I want?
No, I mean, we had talked previously, like when I first started with my first real job and signing up for 401ks and, talking about that stuff. And the thought of working 45 years was like crazy to me. Like, what? I gotta work that long? So I think we always had it kind of in our mind, like we wanted to retire early, like 50 kind of a thing, but didn't know how to even contemplate doing that. We just were putting away in our 401ks and really even only our minimums at that point. So I feel like it was really a pipe dream at that point. But then once I started actually hearing about this movement and researching it and reading blogs and things like that, that's where I'm like, oh, this is how you do this and how you get there and stuff like that. So just sparked me on my journey to really learn about the stuff. Henry wasn't as gung, like he was interested in the whole concept to do it, but learning about it, that wasn't his interest.
Yeah, I mean, typically finance is like my Achilles heel. So I'm not real strong in that area. I'm strong in a lot of other different areas, but I struggle with finances, accounting, all that kind of stuff. Just was never really big for me. And Lucy's amazing at it, so it's kind of a good matchup here. So I just really appreciate everything she's done, because growing up, I was not taught about being frugal and being smart with your money and budgeting and things like that. I mean, I always joke, like, if we didn't get married, I would have a lot of cool stuff, but I'd be broke.
So did you make material changes to your life when you discovered it, or were you already pretty much savers?
We were savers based on different things in our past, I guess. Starting out, we were living on his entry level income. I was still in school, so we were living on my student loans as well. So I've always had a budget, always had spreadsheets to kind of manage that, and we had nothing to start with, so other than student loan debt. So it was pretty basic at that time. But then we were always kind of savers. We had our that we were saving for a house and stuff like that. Once we had our house, then we were saving to have a child. um, so that was just kind of how we always were. And then as we paid off our house, or as we got raises, or as we didn't have to pay childcare anymore, rather than increasing our lifestyle, it was just kind of putting the money back into savings type things. So I mean, we're comfortable how we were living. Did we do everything that we would? I feel that we missed out on
No.
things at all.
No.
But there are definitely times where we look at some other people like, oh, they just do things on a whim and do whatever, and it's fine, and put on the credit card and life goes on, whatever. We were never like that. It was like, nope, we don't have money for that. That's not in our budget, or whatever. So
Okay.
that's just how we lived.
Different goals.
So yeah. So then once I found out about, like, so my daughter would have, or our daughter would have just been going into kindergarten. So we were starting to no longer have childcare and just in the summer. So it was like, well, that was a big chunk of money that was now freed up that I'm like, okay, let's just start putting more towards retirement. And then she got done with that. We paid off our house in 2013, I think. So then it was like, okay, well, all of that money could now shift to savings. And then we paid off our student loans and that money can shift to savings. So that's kind of how we shifted things. And
okay. And how old were you when you got married?
22.
Yeah.
22 and 23.
I was 23. Yeah. You were 23.
Who asked who out?
I asked Lucy out.
Twice.
It
took me a year to come around.
And so what was it about her that sort of spurred that? I'm just curious.
I just, I was hanging out with some friends and walked in the room. She was in there and just was kind of just dumbstruck. And I was like, wow, just beautiful girl. And that's kind of how it all started. And then, over the course of a year, because she wouldn't go out with me right away.
I was dating someone else.
Well, I was going to get to that reason, Henry. I was going to go there.
That's his problem. I mean, no, I was gonna, no, we got to become friends and get to know each other, and then kind of just went from there.
Okay, so now I know why you said no the first time. When you said yes, what was it that said, oh, there might be something there?
Well, actually, so by the time I started realizing, 'cause we were friends, we went away after my freshman year of school, where I both went home for the summer and stuff like that. And I came back and I was like, oh, I missed this guy. And it was fun. I no longer had a boyfriend or anything like that. But he had a girlfriend now. And I was just finally and she didn't like me. So didn't want him talking to me or whatever. So I'm just like, so we didn't talk too much. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to talk to him, and something happens, whatever. So that was the decision I made, that I was going to start pursuing him. But fortunately, he actually, that weekend that I made this decision, I called him up or whatever, and he's just invited me over or whatever to hang out, and found out that he broke up with his girlfriend that weekend. And then he asked me out to actually go out to dinner then the next night, and together ever since then. So.
Okay.
So it was more of a timing thing for us to just get on the same time.
I didn't tell you I was going to ask you about this stuff, so I appreciate you just rolling with it.
That's okay.
Henry, you talked about absent Lucy, you would not have any money but have a lot of toys. So how did you fall into that same rhythm of sort of doing it without, right? Some of your buddies had cool toys while you guys were snowballing your savings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it just became apparent to me that wasn't a sustainable way to live. I don't want to just keep jumping from iceberg to iceberg as the previous iceberg sinks. And then, it's not how I wanted to live. And that, when I started my first job, I got in there and they started talking about 401k. And I mean, I knew my dad had a 401k, but I knew he was just kind of automatic, he wasn't paying attention to it, managing. He was just putting the minimum in and everything like that. But the more they talked about it, the more I realized that we got to get on this early because of the snowball effect, right? And how much it becomes the sooner we start doing this. So I came home and talked to Lucy about it. And at first she's like, no, we don't have money for that right now. That's not where we're at. And I said, no, this is something we really should be doing. If I'm saying that, knowing as little as I know about money, it's probably
also it was you that started that. I love it.
It actually was him. I didn't know anything at that point, and I was like, no, we don't have money. We have to use this money to be socking this away. And I also remember you had brought someone had recommended the book Everyday Millionaire.
Oh, The Millionaire Next Door.
Oh, that's
Next Door.
The Millionaire. Yep. So we listened to that on audio book for that, and that's really interesting.
That was a big influence for me as well. That
Tom Stanley, I think, was the author. Yeah.
just understanding, you don't have to keep up with people, and the people that look like they got it all, probably all they really have is a bunch of debt.
Cash flow millionaires, we call it. So professionally, what industry are each of you in?
Well, I'm on my second career. I'm in tech. I'm a software programmer.
Okay.
But I started out in like financial aid at a university.
Okay. Okay. What about you, Henry?
I'm also on the technology side. I guess you'd call me a business process automation architect. I kind of create automations for business processes, and the company I work for in manufacturing.
Okay. I was curious because those are very high, they're demanding careers. I know software project managers and anything in tech. Because I was a little surprised, like the thought of working for 40 years or whatever it is, you like said it like you almost shivered because I'm looking at you. Is the drive to quote unquote fire or retire early, which we'll talk about in a second, trying to take away the pain of the pace, or what is it?
For me, I don't necessarily have a passion for do at all. Like to me, it's a paycheck. It's a means to pay our bills and to save for our future. So to me, I've never, I don't know. I don't look at it like it's what I want to do
Okay.
forever kind
Okay.
of a thing.
And for me, 2 years ago, I started a new job at the company that I'm now. The previous 7 years, I was a consultant using the same software that I use now. And that was a pace where for me was even a much more bigger deal then because of that pace and the stress and everything of being a consultant and constantly being billable and just, being pushed up at that company to, from a developer where I was happy doing what I was doing all the way to the principal architect there where it was kind of was more sales than anything, and I should not be in sales ever. So I got in doing something that really just drained me all day, and I was like, oh, I gotta do something else, and the sooner we can get out of here, the better, But things have slowed way down for me. Still want to get out just because I want to do what I want to do. Business process automation is fun and cool, and everybody loves what I do for them, but I don't wake up in the morning going, yeah, I just can't believe I'm living my dream, because that's not the case. But
Okay, that makes sense. Because I always my internal criticism of the fire movement, back when I definitely didn't know much about it, was retire early. It sounds more attractive than it is. Because you can look at a lot of the science around happiness and contentment is happy people have projects, right? And have some structure and striving. And everybody I knew that said they were fired never actually retired. They still side gigged all over the place. So they really were working. It was just in a different way. So
no, that is not our intent at
all. Okay. Not our intent at all. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking for structure and stuff like that, but structure on our terms, like,
Yeah.
I want to get up every day and have stuff to do and whatever, but it's what we want to do.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Last question on this whole fire thing is 44 and 45 right now. And we're talking about retiring in a year or two or a few years. What are the obstacles you see as you think about this? It's like a 45-year time horizon.
Yep. Yep.
What are the obstacles that you like, oh my goodness, how do we navigate this?
I mean, fire has all these, 4% rules or 25% or 25 times your expenses to come up what you need. But I just don't feel like that feels like, is that right? And like, especially like, yeah, we want to do 45 years. That's a long time. So that's one of the bigger things, like trying to run the calculators and trying to account for things because there are so many unknowns during that time, like that you can't account for them. So it's some of that and trying to come up with a plan like, okay, so we want to do this, but what if the market starts tanking? What are we going to do then? So I think it's coming up and being flexible, and that I have like our base rate life. I have what I'd like to have discretionary spending, and I have like, oh, well, things are really bad. I have a lower than our base rate life that we can drop to as well. Like that we can kind of go back and forth between budgets to be like, all right, this is fine. We can do this, but now we got to do this, whatever. And I think probably the biggest thing that I see as an obstacle for us is the first 17 years of
the first
healthcare.
17 years.
Well, being at that age, you have to pay for your own healthcare completely. Like, so that's a big chunk of money, that we got to figure out too.
Yeah. But, and how we figured it out is looking at the ACA and the subsidies that are there. So that's a big part of our plan. And that's also a big part that's an unknown, like what could change with that and what would we do? And we've have discussions on that. Like I said, what happens if that does go away? I'm like, because now we're looking at that's going to add probably at least 20 grand to our budget for a year.
Yeah. And as we look at your budget, that's a good percentage.
Yeah.
Correct. So that's a, big thing. I said, do you, especially under, not to be political, but we know right now, like that's something that's going away. I mean, the subsidies the extra ones are already set to go away next year, which doesn't affect our plans because where I'm planning to keep our income, we would still be in the lower level that's still getting the subsidies. So, but
well, you say you have if you think about it, you have a 45-year time horizon. That's over 11 presidential cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I only got to worry mostly about the first 17 years. Once we get to Medicare, I'm less concerned at that point when we get to Medicare age. Could things change with that? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about the viability of Medicare and the viability of Social Security. And, when I'm generally thinking about it, Lucy, I'm like, well, you're 60, so you're probably fine. But you are 44, whether it's Medicare or Social Security, who knows, right? There are a lot of unknowns because of the time frame.
Yep. And because of Social Security, like that, when I run my numbers and look at things, I don't include that in my numbers.
Okay.
I can toggle it on and off in my spreadsheet because then it does feel a lot less tight when I toggle it on. And I even toggle it like, I think I only have like half of what it says we should get. And when I say what they say we should get, I've done the detailed calculator based on having years of zero earnings as well. So yeah, I mean, the Social Security part, I feel like I've always tried to keep it out.
Okay.
Just because, we don't know. I think something will be there. I think it'll be reduced. If it becomes means tested, now that's maybe a bigger deal for us that it wouldn't be around or something. But
you're testing without it is somewhat of a safeguard. Okay.
Yep.
And we'll put a link in the Noodle to an interview I did where we explored the difference between a complicated problem and a complex problem. Because that is really what, we're dealing with that even, for someone that's 60 or 65 in that, and the short, since you guys might not have heard that, is a complicated problem is complicated, but it's figure outable. I would think like code or a process. It's just building the right protocol, right? But it can be insanely complicated, but it's figure outable. A complex problem is one that's so multi-factored that, and the time horizon that you can't predict anything and you can't figure it out. The only thing you can do is manage it. And that's a lot of, even in a traditional retirement is the case. But for you two, because of the different butterfly flaps have a lot bigger impact downstream. That's hard. You can't even figure it out. You just not figure out.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and that's probably my biggest struggle because I am very analytical and love my spreadsheets and all that stuff and like to build like this, yep, this, and have a plan. And yeah, so that's why I have my backup plans too. Like, okay, we could do more when this is good or do less. Like to have, I guess it's kind of like the guardrails, but not necessarily like.
yeah. Well, one last question about this for today's conversation, and that is, how much do you think about like the optionality that you have over this 47 years? If something goes wrong, we can do this. Do you think about what happens if we can't? Like a major health event, or we could always go back to work at some level, but maybe you're not even physically able to go back at work at some level and foregoing those earnings years. How much do you think about those landmines that could pop up?
I mean, I think based on our current savings, like we both could have much lower paying jobs and live. I mean, we basically live off of one income at this point already. So for me, like all of a sudden, if push came to shove and I had to go back to work because something happened to him and now I needed he needed to go into assisted living type things or something that in terms of that, I couldn't take care of myself. Not that we're old, at the point of being that age, but because I can't take care of him physically or whatever, because of the needs he has. Like, would I be happy about having to go back to work? No. Could I do it? Yes. So, I mean, I know that's an option. I think he'd have an easier time going back to work compared to me.
Yeah.
But have you imagined a scenario where, let's say you retire, you're 5 or 7 years in, filling your days, and something happens, and let's say one of you had to go back to work. Well, haven't your skills deteriorated to where you might not be employable?
Marketable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think in our current career, sure. But I wouldn't go back to my current career at that point. Like I said, we could work lower paying jobs.
Okay.
At that point. So.
Okay. And Henry, you were about to say something. I cut you off, so I want to make sure I captured.
No, all good. I mean, yeah, I would have a lot easier time going back to work, and it wouldn't need to be something that, was at the level that I'm at now either, I mean, I could go work at, hardware store or something, like one of the Home Depot or, whatever type of place, there's things like that. And it wouldn't bother me that much knowing the situation, So, I mean, it's definitely something we've thought about. Like, what if things don't go exactly the way we want and we have to, call an audible and make an adjustment? That's something we've kind of thought about for sure.
And even it's something we talked about now, like if like my current employer, like every once in a while there's rumblings about going back into the office because I'm full-time remote. And it's just like, I just can't imagine going back into an office anymore. And then I start looking like, well, what else could I do? Like to not do this.
What levers can we pull?
Yeah. Like, or I just retire and he keeps working because we just need to let our savings grow a little bit longer. Not that we have to keep putting a bunch away like we've been, but it just needs more time to grow.
Well, one thing that we're asking for from everybody listening and all that, and this will be, I'll do it here, is the average age of the person is much higher than you that listens to this show, which is an advantage in that it's like if you're on a trail, they've already walked the trail. And so they can come tell you, watch out for that, or hey, maybe go check this out. So for those of you that are listening, if you have perspective that you want to share to, let's say it's your 44, 45-year-old self on life and work, and what would you tell them? And just go to askroger.me and type it in or leave an audio question. Because I think on the show, in the subsequent episodes, we'll share some of that perspective of maybe cautionary tales, but also encouragement that might be helpful for you guys and others listening in some way.
That'd be cool.
So we will do that. And next time that we chat, we're going to talk about your values and your goals. Sound good?
Yep.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Next week, we're going to get into their financial resources. But for now, let's go set a smart sprint.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a little baby step you can take in the next 7 days to not just rock retirement, but rock life. It's the beginning of the year and you know it. It's the beginning of the year and you know it. It's the beginning of the year, which means we get to update our end of year net worth statement. I won't sing anymore, but I have Oh How I Love My Net Worth song. It's a good barometer. And end of year, I do mine once a month, but I'm silly. Don't do that. Twice a year is a great barometer or a great sequence to do this. But if you do it once a year, now you can look at what the value of all your assets are and your liabilities, and you can compare them to the same time next year. And that will reflect back to you where your debt levels are. Did you pay down debt? Did you take on debt? It'll reflect back where your cash reserves are. Did you build cash reserves? Did you drain them? Where your investment accounts are? Did they grow? Did you contribute to them or did they not? You really can't hide from a net worth statement, which is beautiful. And as you build that up year by year, you can start to identify trends to help inform your decision making. So that is your sprint, my friend. You have all your year-end statements. Update your net worth statement. And we have a resource to do this in our resource center if you've never done one before. So you can go to the resource center at rogerwhitney.com and grab that. And once you've updated it, reflect back on where it was a year ago or set some themes for this year of where you want to improve. Maybe you want to pay off some debt. Maybe you want to build up some after-tax investment assets because you have too much in IRA. Look for soft spots that can help focus your attention for this year. Oh, and by the way, if you have a partner or spouse, once you do it, print 2 copies, share it with them, and talk through it so they understand it too. So what your word for the year is and what words we want to retire when we retire has been filling up my email inbox. I know we did some last week. So I thought I'd share them at the end of the show for a few shows and we'll see how it goes. This one comes from Lindsay. Lindsay says, my word for 2026 is listen. That applies to friends and family members, to people I meet at parties, to strangers who talk to me. Rather than thinking about what I should say next, I want to listen deeply to what they're telling me before responding. The word also applies to listening to myself, to not to be comparing my life to others, and to trust my instincts more. That doesn't mean I won't seek advice when needed, but just that I'll measure the advice against what is most important and true to myself. Lindsay, I love that word. Listening and asking questions just changes your entire life. Like my conversation with Meehan in the ER, just learning about, oh, really? Why is that? Tell me more about that. I love that for you, Lindsay. And I'm reading a book right now about listening to yourself. Let me see if I can find the title. 1 second. Let me open my Kindle. It says I am reading Lead Yourself First, which is, Lindsay, is essentially a study on self-listening, giving yourself space of silence because to get you out of that comparative nature. So I love that for you, Lindsay. I'm excited to hear how that works. And you have an amazing knitting website, and we'll share that in the noodle. I appreciate your passion for the arts and doing cool stuff. Is it knitting or quilting now? I forget. But anyway, we'll share it in the noodle. Have a great day. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance reference is historical and does not guarantee future results. all indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. Make sure you consult your legal, tax, or financial advisor before making any decisions.